Welcome to Introduction to Commercial Leasing. I'm just going to give you the outline for commercial leases and what you need to know for that. My name is Hershal Pleasant. I'm new into the commercial arena at EXP. I want to kind of give you an outline of why to learn commercial leasing. As a residential agent at EXP, you are allowed 7 commercial transactions. So if you have a contact with somebody who's looking for some space, you need to know the terminologies, you need to know the procedures, you need to know what you're looking at and how to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So this is kind of introduction to kind of give you a broad overview of what you need to know to do any kind of commercial transaction. Kind of give you a little bit about me. Here's my family. My wife, Michelle, of 19 years. My 3 kids that are 14, 12, and 8. They keep me busy. Those are one of my favorite hobbies, camping. There's a 1-year-old golden retriever, and trying to tire her out every day is probably half our battle. I've been working commercial only for the last 10 years. I moved to EXP in March. My previous career was teaching. I taught Latin, Greek, and mathematics. So I love teaching. I love kind of going through this process. So if you have any questions, if you want to learn commercial, I'll be happy to help you walk you through the steps and kind of teach you. All right. The first thing we need to do is learn out what the property types. In residential, there's multifamily, there's a townhome, there's single family. These are the property types you'll need to know in commercial. Office space. This is generally what you look at as administrative office, insurance office. Retail. Retail is where you would provide goods and services for payment. Hair salon, clothing store, anywhere you're selling goods. Industrial warehouse. Warehouse is where you store. Industrial is any kind of manufacturing, any kind of fabrication, construction where there's chemicals, and there's a lot of environmental waste. All that is designated into the industrial warehouse. Flex is, like the name says, it's flexible. So they're in ranges that could be warehouse or industrial use, ranging to office use, and some I've seen retail use. So it could be 100% office, it could be 100% warehouse, it could be mixed. One could be 100% warehouse, the next one would be 100% office in a condo right next to each other. When you look at leases, there are major aspects that you need to consider. Taxes, insurance, common area maintenance, and utilities. In the commercial arena, we abbreviate the taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance as TICAM. So when you hear TICAM, that's what that's referring to. If you see a lease that is full service, that means that the tenant pays one check that covers TICAM charges, utilities, janitorial, everything. They may have to pay extra for internet and phones, but should be covered everything else. It's all inclusive. It's a gross lease. If you see MG, that's modified gross. So it's a mix. Those situations are typically the owner pays for the taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance, covers all the TICAM. Then the tenant will just have to pay utilities and janitorial. Triple net is where the tenant pays for everything. The way they break that down is that you will have a base rent, and they'll have what they call pass-through charges. You also see triple N, and that represents taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. Those are those 3 N's stand for. So if you're looking at a lease and you're looking at the prices that's quoted, the prices are always quoted in this market here, price per square foot per year. So if you're paying $12 per square foot, modified gross means that it automatically covers the TICAM. But if you see a triple N, that means that the $12 could be just the base rent, and there's a pass-through charges that could be anywhere from $2.50 to $4 a square foot, more on top of that. So in order to compare the different properties, you have to make sure what the total all-in rent is going to be. The biggest hurdle when I talk to residential agents looking at commercial is zoning. Now, when you buy a house, it's already zoned for residential, and the builder to build it up to the allowance of the zoning. But when you look at the commercial side, you have to look at the zoning to see what is allowed. There are anywhere from 8 to 12 different commercial zoning districts, and each district limits the uses to certain areas. And each municipality has their own UDO. UDO is Unified Development Ordinance. Sometimes they call it an LDO, Land Development Ordinance. So if someone wants to go in Southern Wake County, if you were looking for a particular use, you have to look at Holly Springs UDO, Fuquay UDO, and if it's outside of those UDO, those districts, you have to look at Wake County as well. So each one has a different uses for different districts, and each district is named differently. So you kind of have to figure all that out. And I'll give you a couple examples what that looks like. Here's Apex UDO. They'll divide it usually into residential and commercial zoning. And each use, you'll see that you'll have office. They don't just do generic office, has all these different uses. They have dispatching office, medical laboratory, and professional office. And each one has a different zoning requirements. And if you have a client that has an unusual use or something that's not clear cut in here, there's these little definitions. So they'll define each use. Most of the time, every use is defined. I've had one classification of one space that was, they wanted all dance studios to have one particular zoning type and only allowed to different uses. Sometimes they'll just do generic, just office. But if you look down the definitions, they'll say these offices will have these uses here. You can have a primary and secondary use. And if you have any questions with that, the zoning departments of each of these municipalities are very friendly and kind, and they normally interact with people who never look at these. So they're very friendly, and you can say, hey, this is my use. This is the primary use, this is the secondary use, and they can walk you through the definitions and help you out to figure out which one you're at. The other aspect is that you have to figure out what is the zoning for a particular property. And I pulled up an IMAP here. There is a layer, you can click on zoning, and it will give you all the different zoning of all the different counties and municipalities in Wake County. Now, most of the time it's straightforward, but sometimes it can be a little complicated. I had 3 different clients in this one little neck of the woods. This is near Briar Creek. Off of Pleasant Grove Church Road, we actually made an offer on a piece of property that was Cary zoning, but it was Morrisville address. So that, if you click on it, it'll tell you the class is ORD, and that is Office and Research and Development. And if you go onto UDO, it'll give you all the allowances that you can use under that zoning type. Then there, if you look on the very top right, you see IX3, that is Raleigh zoning. That IX means industrial mix, 3 means 3 stories, and PK is the parking setup that they want. And so in that case there, it was Morrisville address, Raleigh planning department controlled it. I still have a client that's actually kicking out a property just north of this a little bit. It was probably the most complicated one I've had to work through. It was Durham County, but it was zoned by Raleigh, Morrisville address, and Cary water. And so there's a lot of things you have to look through. There's a lot of due diligence. There's a lot of due diligence you have to check out. You just can't go, here's 3 properties, look at it. You have to check each one. Oh, use is allowed on this one, not these 2. So there's a lot of legwork to kind of get properties that work. The other way you can check is the Wake County. What you have to look for is the ETJ. Does anybody know what ETJ stands for? Have you ever noticed that before?
Some jurisdiction.
Extraterrestrial jurisdiction. There we go. ET. So that tells you the city limits of a particular group. So when you see ETJ of CA, that's Cary. Then if you see WA, it's Wake County. Most of them are easy to figure out. Then you go there and they'll tell you the zoning distinction or zoning class. And if you're bored one night, just go pull up a couple of UDOs from municipalities. They're usually about 70 to 80 pages long and details everything.
So this is saying you have to check the carry UDO?
Yes, because this is the UDO for carry. Then you have to look up ORD for that.
And are all the cities just the first two letters? Is there a key for that somewhere?
I don't know if there's a key. I just kind of.
Like, is it MO for Morrisville? Is it RA for Raleigh?
Raleigh, I think it's RA for Raleigh, HS for Holly Springs, FQ for
So
Fuquay.
all of them are pretty.
Yeah,
Pretty obvious.
yeah,
Okay.
like the one that trips me is like Wake County. Like, so a lot of times I'm thinking city, then that throws me off. You have to make sure it's Wake County. Durham is actually easier. Durham County and Durham City zoning is the same UDO. But okay, there's also another caveat I had to say here too. I know Durham's really good about it, but I just completed a lease where it was a flex space building. It was a warehouse building, but it was zoned general business, did not allow any industrial use, even though it was an industrial building. And so we had to fight with the city to make sure his use was approved. And we had to grandfather it in. So you just can't go, oh, this is a flex space, so this should allow a use. You really have to go double check the city to make sure, because he was about to sign a lease on property that he couldn't use. I had one guy who came to me after the fact. He didn't use a commercial agent or didn't have any kind of expertise helping him. He rented a space, signed a 3-year lease. About 2 months in, the city goes, you can't use that use in this zoning. And so he's obligated to finish out a lease that he cannot conduct his business. So he's trying to figure out what kind of business can I put in here that will actually generate some money so I'm not losing the whole thing.
Are a lot of these allow sublets and kind of dividing it up more or less?
You can.
Because like if he advertised for other uses to replace himself.
Yeah, a lot of times you do that. So that's part of leasing where if you can no longer use it anymore, you can find someone to take over. You would have to pay for any kind of attorney fees for drafting new leases and any upfits that the new tenant wants. You'd be responsible for that, but you can be released after that point. I thought you were talking about. Step 2, this is something you guys are probably familiar with, is financials. Before we start looking at spaces, we want to make sure that they get their paperwork in order so that when we do apply for a lease, that the owner will have everything ready for the owner to see. A lot of times, 2 years of P&Ls of the company is useful, or 2 years of personal tax returns. A lot of times I like to have them get that together while we're looking at as I'm trying to find spaces. If it's a new business just starting out, you can go do a personal financial statement. This will outline all the properties they own, what kind of assets they have, and what's their net worth. So, and that makes an owner more comfortable if they have a good financial history. The leases that you sign are typically 3 to 5 years, and you have to personally guarantee them most of the time that you will pay for it. So if you stop after year 1, the owner wants to make sure that there is some financial legs to the individual that they can pay it or they can continue to fulfill the lease requirements. This is where I get jealous of you guys, is the search platforms.
Right.
Like MLS is great. Everything's in one fell swoop. On commercial sites, we are so desperate. There's so many different groups that it's really hard. The big player is CoStar. They're right now about $400 a month to join it. And they do have majority of it. They probably have 90%. There are some people who do not add it to CoStar, but they do have a research team going around to kind of make sure they can tell you as many properties as possible. But it's very expensive. And that's why most commercial agents will have this. That's why having gone to commercial agent for help or to get some of the properties is useful to have that connection. If you want to do it yourself, LoopNet is a great place to start. LoopNet, you can log into for free, and you can look up properties. Now, agents have to pay extra to put it on LoopNet, even though CoStar owns LoopNet. And so if you want people to search it out, you have to pay them extra fee for them to see it on LoopNet. So a lot of agents are not actually putting it on LoopNet because it's not very cost effective. They just do CoStar, they do networking, they do other things besides put on, because they're getting really pricey now as well. Craigslist is the player that's trying to disrupt this whole market. They're free for listing and for searching, but so that if you really want to get out there, you can kind of see a lot of properties. Unfortunately, they do no quality control. So there's some listings on there that are a year old or more, but they don't really filter those at all. So a lot of times, if you have 5 properties, if you call them, maybe 3 of them are already off the market already. MLS, very few people use MLS for commercial. There are a handful of us that I will use it. I like to kind of get that little bit of extra exposure, but I don't use MLS very often. So adding it on it's a headache for me. So I don't do it unless I really have to. But if you want to do something, you can find some. Like I'm on a search for MLS because a lot of agents that would post something on MLS, I get really good values because they're not up to date with the current market value of properties. So I've gotten properties, I closed somewhere anywhere from 25 to my best one was 60% of value I got on it because it was on the MLS. No commercial agent saw it, and I was able to get my client and we're able to kind of talk them down. All right. The other thing you need to consider that's different than residential is lead time for construction. If you're getting a second generation office space, you just need a couple of weeks to find something because you can move in, change some carpet, change paint. It doesn't take too long. If you're second generation restaurants, they can move pretty quickly. If there's any kind of remodeling that needs to be done, if there's any kind of permits that need to be pulled for electrical or plumbing, right now it's 1 to 4 months, depending on how much remodeling you're going to need to have. Commercial also has a delivery type of cold dark shell and vanilla box. This happens a lot in retail, where you walk in, they will strip everything down except for the bathroom to the sheetrock, and that's called a vanilla box. So if you need to do any kind of build out of office spaces or doors and light switches, then that's going to take more time. And sometimes right now with getting the architect approved and getting the permits to build out, it's about 6 months. It's a cold dark shell. Cold dark shell is where it's no HVAC, no electrical, nothing's wrong. A lot of times I've seen it where there's not even a floor, it's gravel. And you have to actually pour the concrete, lay down the water pipes. That right there is going to be 8 months plus. So depending on where your client was wanting, what kind of delivery type there are, depends on the time. Land, this is more of a build to suit. A lot of times if someone wants 10,000 square feet, that's not there, but you can find a guide who will do it, build to suit. If he is early on the permitting, he's got the site plan approved, you can get it down to 16 to 18 months to be able to move in. But if you have to go through the site plan process again and get the architectural plans approved, it could be close to 24 months. So you kind of have to make sure that when if you get their client's desire, figure out how much timeline they have, and that will dictate what options they are available to look at. Now the inventory has been changing drastically. At the current market right now, if you're trying to find office space, Class A, you can find it really quickly. Class A is the high rises, 4 to 5 stories, marble entryways. They're about $40 a square foot. People are leaving those because they don't need the expense. They're moving more to Class B and Class C. And so they're zapping up all the inventory. So it's going to take a couple of months before you can find an office space right now. Retail, there's so many second generation restaurants. There's so many second generation retail shops that you can move pretty quickly depending on the size. Industrial flex is the hottest product right now. Everybody needs flex. For lease, it's taking longer and longer for people to move out. So it'll take 2 to 4 months. So if you meet with somebody, just let them know, depending on what they need, it could take a while for something to come up on the market. The next step, and that's different is the offer phase. For leases and purchases, we start off with a letter of intent, an LOI. Have you guys heard that before? All right, good. And so with a letter of intent, this is a non-binding agreement saying these are the terms that we will move forward with the contract. Usually in that letter of intent, you'll have the lease rate, you would have the any kind of build out that you want. If you wanted some additions made, you can request that in that portion, or you can take it as is. Deposits, escalations. Almost every commercial lease has an escalation. Escalation means that every year that the amount of rent increases a certain percentage. And we kind of, this average is 3, normal is 3. Most of my LOIs, I usually try to make it down to 1.5 or 2%. Then after you agree to terms, that should take you a week or 2, then you can go to the lease agreement. The lease agreement is the binding agreement. And a lot of times it comes with a personal guarantee saying that you will pay this the remainder of the lease. It is a little bit more, I think it's harder to break when a commercial lease than it is a residential lease. So I like and I encourage a lot of my clients to have an attorney review it, especially if it is a lease that is drafted by the landlord. And there's a lot of protections they try to put in to the lease to protect them. That leaves the tenant vulnerable. I really try to push them to get an attorney to review it. The zip forms, then leases are pretty standard. They have equal protections on both sides. And I've done a lot of those, and I feel comfortable moving forward with that without having legal. Yes.
I have a couple questions. Maybe you're getting to it. One, what does it cost to have an attorney review a lease like that in general? Is there like a base expectation fee? And then my second question is, how do you get paid?
Okay.
Is that
So the attorney reviewing it varies. A lot of times they're about $400 an hour. And some people can charge a little bit less, but think about an hour or 2. So it could be under $1,000. Yeah, commercial attorneys charge more than residential attorneys. An average commercial attorney closing is around $4,000. So making a referral. This is where I get your point. So there's several ways that we can do this. If you don't want to learn commercial and you want to refer it out to a commercial agent, there is a 25% referral fee that we offer. So if you have something I can help you out, I will keep you in the loop, give you a 25% referral fee. Because I do love to teach and I do love to help out. If you have any interest in commercial, then I will do a 50-50 commission split with you guys. And I will have all the database, I'll have all the expertise. I'll make sure that you stay out of real estate jail and you can maintain that client relationship and communication. But
You just be a consultant throughout.
Correct.
You'd be the lead. The agent would stay as the lead and they constantly come to you for advice.
Yes. And so I'll make sure that make sure that the use is approved, make sure they know who they called, make sure that it's valid, make sure they're protected, that the client gets the best service. But yeah, they get to learn along the question. They get to ask me a bunch of questions, and it's fun. And actually, it's a benefit to me because they manage the part that I like least is to communicate. A lot of the communications and updates, that's sometimes I forget some of that part, so that is useful to help. So that works out well for me. But if you do want to just refer out, getting their use is vital information. That use tells me not just they're do a hair salon or do something like that. Just if you do a manufacturing, you got to say what are the requirements, what manufacturing are they doing. I have a computer repair company, and they do spray booths. So if they have any kind of something like that, they need phase 3 for the spray booths. That puts it in a different classification because they're doing some refurbishing their inside. Timing, like you showed you earlier, depending on where they're at, how quickly you want to get in, that will eliminate a bunch of different products. Because if there's only cold dark Cheryl and they want 4 months, well, they're not going to be able to get the outfitting in time. So we're going to have to do the second generation route. Target market, that's a useful information to gather because we need to run down the UDOs, and that takes time. Then sometimes if it's not a use that is explicitly stated in the UDO, then they have to call them, or email them now. And there's been, a couple of days that it takes to get back a response, along with the contact information. Now, with the commissions, on leases, you paid 3% of the base rent for the initial term. So let's say that you have a 2,000 square foot building and the rent is $15 a square foot base rent. So that would you pay $30,000 a year. Then if you sign a 5-year lease, that is roughly about $150,000 of commissionable income. So you would pay 3% of that base rent.
At the time of the lease being executed?
You get half at the execution of the lease. You get half at the rent commencement. So let's say if someone is doing a build out, that it takes 6 months to build out. If they sign the lease in January, but they're not going to move into September, you get half at January. Then you get the other half when they start paying rent in September. If you do a second generation space and they move right in, day one of the lease is the rent's commencement, then you get the whole check. You get the whole commission at that one time. Well, I have a couple of resources here. If you have any questions, you can definitely email me. But also, I'm not very tech savvy, so I will have to give you that. I do have a website my son is building for me, and so it's still a work in progress. It's HershalCommercial.com. It's a resource that actually shows you the different steps for buying commercial or leasing commercial and the different terminology. So if you have any questions, that is a resource you can check out if you kind of forgot what steps you need to do.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Do you have any questions?
We would have to have questions.
Yeah. So we'll advertise you throughout the group that you are willing to do referrals, but also if someone wants to get into it, you're willing to kind of side by side with them and still let them make some money along the way while they learn.
Also too is that depending on, there's some times where I have one guy that I'm training in commercial right now, and I've loaded him with a lot of work. And so if someone else really wants to learn, I do have some work I can shove off to them.
Would you take a summer intern?
Yes.
I'm serious. I've got college students that are very bright and they'd be great interns. If you need just like work done, you're like, hey, go ferret this out, go to this system.
Call them. Yeah. That's where a lot of the you cut your teeth on the UDOs, calling planning departments. That's a lot of legwork.
Yeah.
And creating spreadsheets of
I've got a summer guy for you.
Because it's funny that like churches. I'm helping 4 churches right now find space, and Fuquay Arena, for example, they'll allow churches in every use except for industrial. Holly Springs allows it in industrial, but not in some retail settings. And then each one, if you look at each one has a different requirement. And so Apex allows it in pretty much every commercial and residential district. But there's also some caveats too. I just give you an overview. There's also allowed uses and special use permitted use. And that's a whole nother one that could be an hour-long topic on. So this is just the basics. So if you have any questions.
So it's a very good
4-part series.
Sounds
like it.
Absolutely.
We're here.
If you want to learn more, I have fun teaching. So.
Oh yeah, I think you'll find that people are very interested in this. Well, awesome.
For no other reason, when we interact with a residential client who has a dentist, we've had people need dentist office or they're moving here